Hi, this is Hiki with the Lost Samba podcast, and today we're going to speak about one of the most successful Brazil cultural exports, practice from Tel Aviv to Tehran, from Moscow to New York, from Finland to Santiago de Chile, namely the Capoeira. As all the coolest things in Brazil, capoeira is a mixture. In a session of capoeira, it's called a Roda de Capoeira, you will see people standing around in circle, two guys doing lots of movements, which is a mixture of a dance and a fight. You will see some guys or girls playing the atabaque, which in the rest of the world is known as a conga. People playing the berimbau, which is a typical Brazilian instrument. The chanting is normally talking about situations that may incite violence, about disagreements. Then you'll see the master of the Roda overlooking the session. You'll see people at several different levels, so the more senior ones will be showing off their skills and showing how good they are. The less senior ones will be trying to impress them and the master. They want to graduate, they want to expand in the capoeira. And it's a great atmosphere, and you see people of all colors in this very festive and also healthy atmosphere. To explain about capoeira, we will have to delve a bit in its history. This is a very, very complex area because the history of capoeira is involved in a lot of myths, a lot of controversy. And one thing one has to know is that no one really knows where it comes from. The people say, no, it's something that was invented in Brazil, it's 100% Brazilian. Other people will say other things, but it's really a mystery how it appeared. It is there, it is very Brazilian, it's sung in Portuguese, the main teachers are Brazilian, but let's see its history. This invention of glorious past or mythical past or very nice stories saying the past is no novelty to the human race and is the basis of many nationalisms and of religions and ideologies. And I will say no more, but one has to, and we're going to try to do this, differentiate what is myth and what is reality. Let's dive into it. There are two lenses that you can look at capoeira's history. One is, I'll call it the beautiful one, the romanticized one, and the other one is based on historic facts. But let's begin on the romanticized version, which is the version that's mostly known, that if you go into a capoeira group, they'll tell you this, and I mean, it's a given truth within the capoeira world. In this version, the capoeira came in the slavery ships from Africa. No one's certain from which tribe or from where, but it came in the slavery ship. Then it became an oral tradition. In a world where people were enslaved, the only thing they owned was their body. They didn't own anything else. And fighting or being able to defend yourself was the only way to defend that only thing that you have and keep it alive and make it live well. The capoeira would have the origin in this struggle. This version carries on to say that the capoeira from these first enslaved people, from the ancestors of capoeira, it went to the Quilombo dos Palmares. Now, the Quilombo dos Palmares, I have to explain very quickly. I have explained in previous podcasts, where escaped slaves, they created a kingdom that lasted for at least a century, that resisted the white oppressor, and the crown or the Brazilian government sent armies there. Many of them were defeated. It was finally defeated, but with a stiff resistance. This is a unique thing that didn't happen in any other country, with the exception of Haiti, but that was successful. They overthrew the French, but that's another thing. We're speaking about Brazilian history, but this kingdom is very unique in Latin America. Haiti is in the Caribbean. The leader of the Quilombo dos Palmares, Zumbi dos Palmares, would in this version be a capoeirista, and he taught this to the many slaves that escaped. Was a powerful guy, and they used the capoeira in their resistance against the government's army, that were intent in destroying the Quilombo dos Palmares. After it was eventually destroyed, again in this version, it went to the big cities, where it became an instrument of self-defense of the oppressed. So it became illegal. Capoeira, the first time it appears in the legal system, that one reads about it, it is by a law making it illegal. It was made illegal like at least 8 times throughout history, and this was until the 1940s, which is relatively very recently. This beautiful version that I'm calling, it says that this is where the music came in, because the guys were training capoeira, and when the police came, they tell the police, we're just dancing, we're having fun here. Then in the 1950s, around that time, they began a movement to make it legal and to make it mainstream. Several intellectuals did that, but also 2 big mestres of capoeira from Bahia, Mestre Pastinha and Mestre Bimba. They fought for this. They had the idea to take it out from being something illegal and to make it be considered a sport. And this eventually was successful. It spread to the middle class. Nowadays, it is widespread throughout the world. It's very popular outside Brazil too, and it was declared national cultural patrimony by the Brazilian government. Let's see the points that are most probably true in this romanticized version. The first one is that it comes from Africa. There's no doubt about it. There's nothing similar to capoeira. In Portugal, you would have had like sword fights and knife fights and people punching each other when they were drunk. But there was nothing like capoeira in Portugal. The natives on their side, they have their martial arts, which is very similar as their culture is to the Japanese sumo. You have like yearly festivals where they fight this huka, that's the name of the fight, and these festivals are named Quarupi. And every year they have a Quarupi, they have these contests. The rules are very similar to sumo. You grab the other person and or turn him over or push him outside the circle. It's all based on physical strength. Again, nothing to do with capoeira. On the other hand, in Africa, there are at least 5 tribes that practice something very similar to capoeira, in Senegal, in Madagascar, and especially in Angola, where most the enslaved people came from. They practice something called Ngolo. There are also several places in Africa that they have similar instruments to the berimbau. everything points that the origin of the capoeira is undoubtedly African. It's not, although 100% Brazilian. The other truth is that obviously it was illegal in Brazil. People will say, okay, there you go. It was illegal because they were oppressing the Afro community, they were oppressing the poor, but the reasons for its illegality have nothing to do with this. The reasons for its illegality is that it was used a lot in thuggery. There were lots of thugs that used capoeira, and these thugs, they were used by powerful people or by rich businessmen, rough businessmen, by farmers, and they had capoeiristas to extort or to collect money, to intimidate the enemies. You know, many were politicians, they had enemies, they used capoeiristas to intimidate them. They also, lo and behold, used capoeiristas to end with samba, end with candomblé, and then with capoeira, which were all illegal. You couldn't do neither candomblé, nor samba, nor capoeira, and they would hire capoeiristas to finish with it. The first book about a capoeirista, the capoeirista appears as a guy who is unbeatable in a fight. He would take on 5 people at the same time and beat everybody up, similar to how Chinese or how the Orientals speak about their martial arts heroes. But again, he is a thug hired by a powerful politician. All this thuggery and these thugs, they appeared in Rio de Janeiro and not in Salvador. There's even talk about capoeira regiment in the Paraguay War, which was the most deadly war Brazil has ever been involved with, against Paraguay, obviously, and there was a regiment of capoeiristas in this war, also serving the Brazilian army, captained by a white government and by a white hierarchy. There's no official register of it being used in farms against white farmers, you know, farms with Afro slaves. There's no historical account, nothing written of these events happening, which probably would have gone to the press. People would talk about it. It would be a very serious thing, and there are no accounts of this being used in farms, although there are paintings of enslaved people doing a fight that's very similar to capoeira. So it's a gray area there. Even the name is involved in mystery, and no one really knows where the name comes from. So capoeira in Tupi-Guarani, which is a native language, is a clearing that's been abandoned. So that's probably the area where the enslaved people trained capoeira. It's also the name of a basket used by enslaved people in their work to transport chicken. In the 50s, when they were trying to make capoeira mainstream, the two main mestres, Mestre Bimba and Mestre Pastinha, they were kind of inherently antagonistic, and they came with a division of capoeira that never existed, the Capoeira de Angola. Which is a more studied, it's slower, it's on the ground, there's a lot of ritualistic, almost like holding each other and studying the opponent. And there is the Capoeira Regional, done by Mestre Bimba, that's much more athletic. Much more open-minded and focused on attracting people from the middle classes, and that it was open to getting movements from Oriental martial arts, a lot of kicks, a lot of spins that came from China or Japan rather than from Africa. The Capoeira Regional, or the regional Capoeira, is the most successful of these two main schools. It was brought to Rio de Janeiro. It left Bahia with Mestre Camisa, who was a disciple of Mestre Bimba.
Oh, no, no, no.
And he introduced it to Rio. He first did a small group called the Grupo Senzala. His first students, they all became mestres. They all had their own following, Peixinho, Beija-Flor, Garrincha. It was very successful. It was they who took the capoeira outside Brazil. So they had workshops all over the world. And as it grew bigger, tensions appeared. The name Senzala stayed with one group, but the group of Camisa and his factions, so to speak, became the Grupo Abadá, which kind of is, as far as I know, was the main group after the Senzala split up. This was in the 90s. It may have changed. I don't know. I haven't been in contact with the capoeira, so if it's wrong, please excuse me. Capoeira can be divided into three main aspects, right? The first aspect is the show-offiness of it. The show-offiness around capoeira has a reason. This reason being that for a long while, one of the main focuses of the capoeira mestres was to bring students. So it was very common in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s for you to see rodas in like better parts of the town, with the sole intent of attracting people to the capoeira. So they did very beautiful movements, you know, they did the acrobatics and everything, which impressed people, and this would attract capoeira disciples, so to speak. Not only the movements attracted people, but also the music, the exoticism of the instruments. The songs were also close to the candomblé, but they were not songs that everybody knew. Very easy to remember, you know, very, one could say primitive, but good primitive songs. I can clearly remember Mestre Camisa, when he wasn't the big Mestre Camisa, when he was beginning in the 70s, he'd go to Ipanema, which was a kind of an exclusive beach, and he'd do a roda there, and everybody would go just to see the very intricate things that they did with their body, the control that they had. Everybody would go and see it, and many guys, like myself, they wanted to do that. They wanted to learn how to do it. So it is a marketing of the capoeira, this show-offiness. The second aspect, obviously, is the fighting aspect. Capoeira can become very nasty at times, especially when people from one school, say from someone from the Capoeira Regional goes to Capoeira de Angola, or vice versa, or people who have one teacher goes to the Roda of another teacher, that can become very nasty. Or when people want to graduate or show off to the mestre, it can also become very nasty. Or sometimes people don't like themselves and they go into a Roda, and it can be quite nasty. And finally, there's a social side of capoeira. In most capoeira courses or schools, it's usually divided into 2 hours of physical exercise for you to get fit. So 1 hour of physical exercise, another training the movements, and then there's the Roda. So you have to be really fit. It's very physically demanding. But there's a big social side. There are many friendships that are forged there. Many marriages. Capoeira is a known place for people to meet each other and to marry. There are many girls who go to the capoeira. It's homophobic, so there's no marriage in this aspect. One of the coolest things I think about capoeira is that no one knows each other's name. You in your batizado you receive a nickname, and from there everybody will know you by your nickname. So Camisa is shirt is like a huge mestre Bimba. No one knows his name for sure. Well, they do know if you see his documents. I can't remember his name. Mestre Pastinha. Everybody in the capoeira has a nickname. Your social status and who you are stays outside the door. In the capoeira, you're a capoeirista, and that's it, which I find very cool. Capoeira appears in Brazilian music in several ways. Well, first is the capoeira music, obviously. That's, as I said before, no one really knows the origin, but it's clearly, if you listen to the songs that are chanted in the capoeira rodas, they're very similar to the ones of candomblé. So no use talking about that. It's the same, and some are actually used in both. Then when the capoeira started to go mainstream and everything, it entered the bossa nova and the leftist thing in a very fantasized way, if you could say. Like the capoeiras were like heroes of the people. There's a famous song of Vinicius de Moraes called Berimbau that uses the sound of the berimbau that his guitarist at the time, Baden Powell, also recorded instrumentally. It's a great recording. It's a great song. The lyrics are very good, but it's a romanticized vision of capoeira, very patronizing in a way, as a lot of the bossa nova was towards Brazilian popular culture. And then there was Naná Vasconcelos, who he comes from Pernambuco, but he was like the biggest percussionist Brazil has ever had, at least with international projection. He won like the Emmy Awards for Best Percussionist 15 years in a row or something like that. And he was a master in the berimbau. Did things with the berimbau that made it like a psychedelic trip. The sound of the berimbau is a bit psychedelic, but he really took it to a different level. And then finally, there's a song that I'm going to play today that's probably the song that best gets the vibe of the capoeira. You know, a fight, or the lingo. It uses a lot of the capoeira movements, the names of it, like martelo, meia lua inteira, meia lua, which is the martelo is like a frontal kick. The meia lua is when is a half moon, but when your leg goes kind of over the opponent. The name of the song is Meia Lua Inteira. Was written by Caetano Veloso. It's not patronizing. It just uses all the imagery of the and the vibe of the capoeira in a very poetic way. And obviously I hope you like it. Meia lua inteira, supapo na cara do fraco, estrangeiro gozador, boca de coqueiro baixo, quando engano se enganou. Dom, din, dom, dom, São Bento, de homem de movimento, martelo do tribunal. Fugiu da praça a tempo, caminhando contra o vento, no terreiro regional. So I practiced capoeira. I'm probably the worst student mestre camisa has ever had. I did it for 2 years in Brazil. And then later on I moved to France and I practiced capoeira with the Senzala group in Paris for 2 years also. But I really sucked at it. I ended up understanding a bit more of it, some coups, but it really made me really fit. And as one would expect, I made a lot of friends through it, and it opened doors for me in Paris. I used to play there in the night in Paris. So that was very good. About the classes, especially with mestre camisa, it was very like proper military stuff. You know, it was very demanding. He because I didn't get it, he used to get very irritated. But the classes were huge. They were like at least some 70 people having classes, and obviously the more graduated people trained on one side, the less graduated people trained somewhere else, and the guys who were starting, the guys who sucked, trained somewhere else, sometimes with more graduated people. He was very, he is still, he's still very passionate with his students. He really helped the guys who were good. They all became like mestres and famous names within the capoeira, and many of them open courses in other places in the world, in the UK, in the States. As I said before, anywhere in the world you find capoeira classes, and it's almost like a mafia. So if someone, like I lived in Glasgow for some time, so there was someone wanting to open some capoeira classes there. So they called some guys from the Senzala to do a batizado there. That became a big event. It's all kind of paid by the group, and you get these big capoeiristas. It attracts a lot of people, and like this you get students. Obviously the alphas of the group, they impose themselves by I wouldn't say violence, like killing other people, but you know, for you to be a top guy, you have to impose yourself in the Roda, and any guy who got very cheeky had to play with mestre camisa, who'd obviously humiliate the guy or put him in his place. There was one incident then, the capoeira classes. It was somewhere in Botafogo, a sports court, and sometimes there were groups. Once there was a huge group that came from New York, some black people with Rastafari hairs and some very beautiful girls from New York. They came there to have the experience of training in Brazil, which they probably paid quite a lot of money to go there. But there was one incident that kind of stuck in my mind. So above the capoeira classes, there was a preparatory school for people wanting to go to university. You had classes there, mathematics and physics, blah, 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 for you to pass a university test that in Brazil at the time was called vestibular. And there was like this tall black guy who used to like to see the Roda. For some reason, he decided to do breakdancing while they were doing capoeira, and that was a huge offense for mestre camisa. So he kind of pushed the guy into the Roda and made a really tiny guy, but who was really good, beat the hell out of the guy. There's no other word for it. So it shows a bit of like it is thuggish. It is thuggish. For you to be a top guy, you have to be a thug, and you have to be very good. But as in any organization of the kind that pays off, you're respected. They can send you to another country. You open your own course, and it's a brotherhood. So that's more or less how the capoeira, at least in my days, worked. As I said, I haven't had contact with capoeira for a long time. I sucked at it. Probably someone will be knocking on my door saying, hey, you shouldn't have said that about capoeira. But anyway, I hope you liked this week's episode, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.